Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the sixth and final course in our degustation menu. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves over the last couple of weeks and got a lot out of the presentations to date. Today's on the menu is Dr. Patrick Mccarthy. Dr. McCarthy qualified in medicine in Glasgow in Scotland in 1980, and he has now become one of Wellington's foremost medical hypnosis experts and internationally recognised medical hypnosis expert and author on the subject. He's developed a series of self-help books, one of which is dedicated to preventing anxiety and panic attacks, and that's what he's going to talk to us today about. So, Dr. McCarthy, it's over to you.
Hi. So I hope you guys have all got this questionnaire, and what I'm assuming is that some of you might not have it, or you haven't filled it in yet. But let's talk about measurement, because in your work, you measure lots and lots of things. And in the work of a doctor, we measure things like blood pressure or cholesterol level or sugar levels or your weight or whatever. And what I'd like to do is to measure stress, burnout potential. Because if you don't know what's creeping up on you, and it does tend to creep up on people, it can certainly give you a huge problem. And we want to avoid those problems. But we have to have a way of measuring to make sure that we're not creeping into that. So if you look up the questionnaire called Burnout Inventory, and I'll just go through with it with you. If you haven't filled it in yet, just get out a bit of paper and record your results so that relate what's been happening to you over the last 3 to 6 months. And here's how you score it. 0 for you don't experience this or only occasionally. 1 point, this statement is true for you quite frequently. And 2 points for you experience this most of the time, almost daily. Doesn't have to be daily, but almost daily. So number 1 is constantly exhausted, tired most of the time. 0, 1, or 2. Number 2, becoming more irritable, shorter and shorter fuse. Number 3, having less time for people, even family and friends. 4, increasing difficulty in making decisions. 5, aware of frequent difficulty in concentrating. 6, chronic forgetfulness. I was almost going to forget that one. 7, feeling hopeless, like, oh, who cares? Why bother? Number 8, regular sleep disturbance. Wakeful, never enough sleep, sleeping a lot. Number 9, often wake up in the morning feeling unrefreshed. Number 10, feeling frequent feelings of worthlessness. I'm a failure. Everything sucks. Number 11, loss of enthusiasm or enjoyment about your work. Number 12, appetite change, either overeating or loss of appetite. Number 13, overlooking normal duties or responsibilities. Number 14, feeling unappreciated most of the time. Number 15, feeling burdened by responsibilities and pressures. And number 16, aware of accomplishing less and less in the time available. 17, becoming excessively preoccupied with details. Though for some surveyors, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Number 18, increasing inability to say no. Number 19, becoming overly dogmatic, inflexible, or fussy. Number 20, driving yourself too hard in your work. Number 21, becoming cynical or hyper-cynical with family or friends. Number 22, increasing boredom with work or life in general. Number 23, losing a clear perspective on work or life. And number 24, a growing sense of being out of control in any area of life. And number 25, the last one, a frequent somatic symptom such as headache or backache or chest pain or abdominal cramps or diarrhea or indigestion or skin rash or allergy or persistent colds or accidents. Give yourself 1 point for every one of those things. And then you get a total score. And the scoring is 0 to 5 is very, very healthy. 0 to 5. A total score of 6 to 10, bit of concern. 11 to 20, change urgently required. 21 to 30, burnout. And 31 plus is actually depression. Because a lot of these things are actually symptoms of depression that I've listed. And I can tell you folks that when I first did this exercise on myself as a busy doctor, I scored 26. And it was a bit of a wake-up call for me. 26. And I thought it was fine. I thought, it's a busy job. It's just stressful. That's the nature of the job. You can't do anything about it. Well, I was wrong. You can do something about it. So there's a second questionnaire, which I think is more important. It's the Burnout Prevention Assessment. Now, here's a list of important ways to prevent burnout. And work through this checklist to see how much they're part of your lifestyle. So I'll give you the scoring and record the figure corresponding to the answer that's right for you. And the scores will be between 5 and 0, but if one of the answers doesn't sound quite right for you, just put in a number that's more right. So number 1, do you have a full day off to do what you like? Every week, almost, give yourself 5 points. Frequently, give yourself 3 points. Occasionally, 1 point. And seldom, 0. Do you have time out for yourself to be quiet, think, meditate, or pray? Daily, 5 points. Frequently, 3. Occasionally, 1. Seldom or never, 0. Do you have good holidays? About 3 to 4 weeks in a year. Yearly, 5 points. Occasionally, 3 points. Rarely, 2 points. Almost never, 0. Do you do some aerobic exercise for at least half an hour at a time? I don't mean jumping to conclusions. Because for some people, that's the most exercise they get. 3 to 5 times a week, 5 points. Occasionally, 3 points. Never 0. Do you do something for fun? For instance, play a game or go to a movie or a concert? Weekly, 4 points. Monthly, 2 points. Occasionally, 1. Rarely is it 0. Number 6, do you practice any muscle relaxation or slow breathing technique? Daily, 5 points. Frequently, 4 points. Occasionally, 2. And never 0. Do you listen to your body messages, your symptoms, your illnesses? And this is particularly to men. Do you listen to your body? Always 5 points, mostly 3 points, occasionally 1, seldom or never 0. Now here's one, it's 8 or 9. If you're single, do you have friends that you can share with at a feeling level? Regularly 5 points, frequently 4, occasionally 1, seldom or never 0. And if you're married or in a relationship, how would you describe it? Would you describe it as close with intimate sharing? Give yourself 5 points. Superficial, 2. Cold, 1. Lonely, 0. Number 10, do you share your stresses, your cares, your problems, your needs with others or your God? Regularly 5 points, frequently 4, occasionally 2, and never 0. How would you describe your ability to communicate with others? Good, 5 points. You're trying to improve, 3 points. Difficult, 1 point. And poor, 0 points. Do you sleep well for at least 6 to 7 hours at a stretch? Every night almost, 3 points. Frequently, 2. Occasionally 1, and never 0. Are you careful to eat a good balanced diet? And you know what a good balanced diet is. It's not KFC. Always 5, most of the time 3, not often 1, and lots of junk food, 0. Is your weight appropriate for your height? In other words, are you too short? It's a different way of saying it. All the time, 3, hard to keep it this way. You're overweight, 0. 17, how would you describe the amount of touch that you get in your life? As much as you need, 5 points. Frequent, 4, occasional 2, and seldom or never 0. Are you able to deal with your anger? We all get anger without dumping it on others. Always 5, mostly 4, occasionally 3, rarely 1, and never 0. Do you have a good belly laugh? Daily 3, frequently 2, seldom 1, and never a 0. Do you have a creative hobby time? Gardening, music, painting, playing bridge. Weekly, 4 points, occasionally 2, Rarely 1, never 0. Do you ever nurture your self-esteem with like self-affirmations? Regularly, you can get 5 points. Occasionally 2 and rarely 0. Do you practice forgiveness of others who hurt you? Regularly 5, occasionally 2, and seldom or never 0. And the final one, have you dealt with old hurts and baggage? Emotional baggage from the past. All that you're aware of, 5 points. Most of it, 3 points. And a lot left yet. That's 0. Now this is inverted in scoring. So good skills would score 80 to 100. And barely adequate skills would score 70 to 80. 60 to 70, I would say, was inadequate. 50 to 60 was deficient. And under 50, you're in trouble. Now, when I first did this one, I told you the last one I scored 26, which was pretty bad. For this one, I scored 26 again. That's why I remember it. You can see that under 50 is in trouble. So I thought, whoa, I've got to make some changes here. And what you've got here is a sort of a buffet of options. Some are more achievable than others. But you can be clever. So for instance, if I go for a game of golf, being a Scotsman, that's in my DNA. And on my cell phone at work, I record a message, Dr. McCarthy is on a course, unavailable for 4 hours. But that gives me time for intimate sharing with friends. Male bonding time. It counts as aerobic exercise. I wouldn't say that golf counts as fun. Those of you who are golfers will know that the reason that golf got its name was because all the other 4-letter words had been taken up. Do you set realistic goals? And you can always eat a better diet, surely. Now, in the last 2 years, my wife and I have introduced a thing called Date Day. And what we do is I take a Friday off once a fortnight and we spend it in each other's company. And that's the important part. We take turnabout so that once a month I organise it and once a month she organises it. And I might take her for a lunch. We could go to a movie. And we could spend the evening maybe painting a bedroom. We could do some gardening together. We could go for a walk along the beach. One of us chooses the format of the day and the other fits in. And we spend that time together and it's sacrosanct. We switch our phones off. We spend the time together. But what I'm going to talk to you about now is how to relax profoundly. I get lots of people who tell me they don't have anxiety. They're just a bit stressed, a bit pressured. And then when I teach them how to relax, they realize how much tension and pressure they've been under. So what I'm hoping is that you've got a score for both of these. And I deliberately don't want to know your score because that's private. It's like your cholesterol level or your weight. And what I'd like you to do is put this aside and on a monthly basis, 12 times a year, just take it out and go through it. It only takes a few minutes. I mean, it's been 21 minutes since we started, including Neil's introduction. So it's 15 minutes. It's easily done. I can tell you that I now score for the first one 7, which is a bit of concern, but it's as good as I can get it. And for the second one, I score 66, which is still room for improvement. But it's not 26 and 26. You have to measure something in order to change it, to realize that it needs to change. In actual fact, I changed career after this. I realized that general practice was just going to burn me out. And what tipped me over the edge was speaking to my young daughter and saying, your dad's a doctor and your mother's a school teacher. When you grow up, do you reckon you might want to be a doctor or a school teacher? And she said, no, because if I had children, I'd like to spend some time with them. Oh, it was like a knife in the heart. And I said to my wife that night, I never want to hear that again. So I planned the exit out of general practice and went into this business. And I'm my own boss. I set my own schedule. I can go on a course whenever I want. And I feel far more in control of my life. And in 2 weeks' time, I turn 65. And I've got no intention of retiring because I love what I'm doing. I mean, I've just written a textbook, How to Cure Anxiety in just 5 therapy sessions. And I used to travel before COVID all over the world teaching. I mean, last year I had a 12-city tour through Europe arranged, culminating on the 31st of May in Istanbul on the night of the Champions League final. And it was COVIDed to nothingness. I never got a chance to go over there and see that wonderful game. I think it was Paris Saint-Germain against Bayern Munich. Yeah. Well, maybe next year. So what I specialize in now is in hypnosis. And let me explain what hypnosis is like. It's not like what you might have seen on TV or stage shows. There's no swinging watches, anything like that. It's more like listening to a play on the radio. Or perhaps there's someone reading from a book where there's no pictures. And your job as the listener is to imagine those scenery inside your head. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start by talking about whichever room you're in. I won't see it. I'm going to get you to focus in on the body a little bit. I'm going to then branch off and tell you a little story from my childhood that you may or may not relate to your own childhood. I'll then get you to focus on every part of your body. Simple as that. Now, normally I would ask you at the end, how did that feel? But we'll put stuff in the chat box or whatever to make sure that everyone has enjoyed it and so on. So assuming that you can listen, assuming that you're in a comfortable chair, in any position that you want, just close your eyes and listen to the sound of my voice. Now, as you listen to the sound of my voice, at all times during this session, you can be aware of your surroundings. You can be aware of the approximate size and shape of the room. You can know where the door is and roughly how far apart you are from the door. You can hear a variety of noises, maybe traffic noises, maybe people milling about around you. And you can maybe feel the fabric of your clothes or the chair. You can notice if it's rough or smooth, shiny or dull, and so on. And all of these things that I have mentioned so far are examples of external awareness, awareness of your surroundings. But with your eyes closed, what you're going to learn today is what's called internal awareness. Now, internal awareness comes in both positive and negative varieties. Negative is the most common one, the one we all know about. If we get a tummy pain, for instance, we would tend to focus in on it. We would notice the site of the pain, whether it was top, middle, or bottom, whether it was left or right or central. Then we focus in on the severity. Is it mild? Is it moderate? Is it severe? And then we start jumping to conclusions about significance. What does it mean? Is it constipation? Is it a dodgy pie that I had at lunchtime? Is it the start of appendicitis or something much worse? And you know what it's like when you get an unwanted thought in your head, whether it's anxiety or worry, how at times it can fill the mind. It can flush away logic, common sense and reason. But on the other hand, there's what's called positive internal awareness. Now, positive internal awareness requires focused concentration. And I'm very lucky because I first learned about the power, the quite astonishing power of focused concentration more than 50 years ago. Now, back in those days, I was quite young. And believe it or not, I lived in a place called Scotland, which probably explains why I'm speaking with a Scottish accent. And in that brief couple of weeks that we lovingly call the Scottish summertime, one of my childhood memories, and you might have one very similar for all I know, is that on a hot, hot summer's day, I used to enjoy playing with a magnifying glass. You see, my father owned this industrial strength magnifying glass on a stand. And he used it for his hobby of repairing watches. But when he wasn't looking, I would borrow the magnifying glass. I would sneak it outside under my jersey with a bit of newspaper. Often I'd have my little brother with me. I've always been a bit of a show-off. I bet you can probably imagine what my little brother was like. You're not supposed to have that. I'm going to tell on you. Put it back right away before we get into terrible, terrible trouble. And back then, I think he thought if he said terrible twice, it had to be twice as terrible. And me saying, shh, just watch. But instead of holding that glass up close to the paper to magnify the print as he was expecting, I held it at a distance. Well, you can imagine the puzzled look on his face. Huh? That's too far away. I won't magnify the print. Till he suddenly saw how the light from the sun was passing through the lens. And because of the special shape of the lens, well, I bet you know what happened. See how it focused all the way down to this tiny, tiny dot of incredibly bright white light. And as he watched the white dot, see how it started to change. I bet you know what happened. See how the light went brown and it darkened. Then the paper smoldered and it smoked. And eventually it suddenly burst into flames. And my brother would say, wow, can I do that? So I taught him how to do that. I taught him that I had discovered that you had to hold it at just the right distance. Not a millimeter closer, nor further away. Secondly, you had to hold it really, really still and focused on that one spot till it changed. Now, back in those days, that was focused concentration of light and heat energy from the sun. which I'm told is about 150 million kilometers, or 93 million miles for you that are still thinking in miles. Though to be honest, I've never measured it out for myself. But today you're going to discover what happens when you take the positive power of your subconscious creative imagination. And I'm going to show you how to use your positive thinking mind. The one that you've used every waking moment of your life, only ever as a thinking tool. But folks, for the next few minutes, I'd like to use it exclusively as a focusing tool. Like the alternate use of the magnifying glass. So as much as you possibly can, what I'd like you to do is to take all of your thoughts, all of your awareness, every scrap of your concentration, and focus it all now on the right foot and toes. As you do so, feel the foot change. When I say change, it may tingle, it may flicker or twitch. It might just feel kind of floppy. Now focused on the right lower leg. Let's hit around the back, because that's where all the muscle fibers are. Then focusing in on the right upper leg. And because thigh muscles are bigger and longer, it's usually easier to feel the softness and looseness on that side. Then shift the focus across to the left foot and toes. Feel whether it moves a fraction. If so, in which direction? Or whether it chooses to stay quite still and floppy. Then the left lower leg, loosening and unwinding and letting go. Then the left upper leg. Pay attention to the loss of tension. Now, people have often said to me that this slow, steady, somewhat pedantic way of guiding you into muscle relaxation and eventually into what's called hypnosis. Well, it's a bit like watching a piece of wax melting. At first, the wax starts off solid and white. But from the very first moment that I start to speak in my soft voice, and particularly if at any stage, the eyelids flicker or twitch all by themselves, or the wax starts to soften and to melt. Oh, sure, initially, admittedly, the wax probably still seems to be the same, at least on the outside. That's because it's melting from the inside. It softens and it crumples, till eventually it becomes clear and runny and quite liquid. So as you focus now on the muscles of the buttocks and the pelvis, you can feel what I mean by soft and softening from within. Then as you focus on the tummy muscles, feel how they now just slowly and steadily just rise and fall in time with the breathing. And speaking of the breathing, as you focus on the chest muscles, well, by now it should be fairly obvious that the breathing has become slower and so much more relaxed. But I wonder if you've realized yet that it's the out breaths in particular that are enabling you to be even more floppy. So for instance, as you focus on the shoulders, feel the softness and the looseness and the easy movement. Then really sharpen up that focus. Focus on the right upper arm. Feel it hanging there by the side of the body like a bit of spaghetti that's been cooked. And the right lower arm switching off. And the right hand and fingers. Feel inside each knuckle, each tiny little joint. Till it's just the shape of the bones holding the hand in place. Then across to the left upper arm, floppy as. And the left lower arm switched off. And the left hand and fingers. Every knuckle, every tiny little joint. Then coming all up to the big neck muscles. As the neck muscles release and relax, sometimes the sheer weight of the head, all 5.4 kilograms of it, might move the head a fraction to a position of absolute rest. Then feel the chin and the jaw loosening from the inside to the outside. And the cheeks somewhat droopy and floppy. And then the eyelids, which have so patiently waited for their turn. Feel them closed all the way down now like shutters on a window. And just when you might think that the eyes couldn't possibly close anymore, well, the little muscles at the sides of the eyes let go. And with a final flicker perhaps, the eyes are now completely closed. Then the forehead relaxes, smoothing and soothing away. And the top of the scalp and the back of the head. So that now, and with every breath that you take out, there's a sort of ripple of relaxation cascading through the body. And this is what I call light hypnosis. Notice how in light hypnosis you can still, as promised, have the external awareness of the room that you're in. You can still hear the noises outside. You can still feel the fabric of any cloth that you're touching. But I hope that you can now appreciate this vastly increased positive internal awareness. How the body's communicating with the brain. How the mind has modified the muscles. Now, normally if you were in the room with me, I would ask you to tell me, what do you notice the body feels like now? But because I can't see any of you during this presentation, I'd like you to notice what apparently has happened to the body in the last half an hour. What does it feel like? And what in particular do you notice about the apparent weight of the body? Now, I know from experience that some people might feel heavier and some people might feel pretty much the same weight. And some people might feel very, very light. The cadence and rhythm of my voice has guided more than 400 million muscle fibers of your bodies into a state of floppy relaxation. And if your brain focuses on the floppy, you get the heaviness And if it focuses on the relaxation, you tend to get the lightness. And notice what's happened to the temperature of the body. For some people, it'll be slightly warmer. For some people, it'll be much the same. And for some people, it'll be a bit cooler. Whatever it is, it'll be the perfect temperature for your body. Then a bizarre one. Notice what's happened to the size and even the shape of the body. Notice if you're aware of where the body ends and where the world begins. Notice what's happened to the size of the hands, apparently. Notice how far apart the feet seem to be. And how far away the feet are. Now, if you've changed your perception of body size and shape and weight and temperature, then you've just changed 4 physical absolutes that are unchangeable. So in this lovely state of relaxation, you can also change your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and your responses, all of which are far more changeable than what you've already changed. But what I'd like you to learn is what's called self-hypnosis. I'd like you to learn how to put yourself into this state of great relaxation whenever you want, in less than about 60 seconds. And this will give you time out. This will give you something that's a bit fun. This will give you muscle relaxation. This will help your sleep. This could be a new hobby. You get lots of points along the way. Shared points, if you like air points. Now I'm going to count from 1 to 10. When I reach the count of 8, at 8 the eyes will open spontaneously all by themselves. And at 10 you'll be wide awake and entirely back to reality. And if for any reason you're interested, you can notice what happens if you try to open the eyes before the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, eyes fully open, 9, and 10. Now, I know from experience that some people will have opened their eyes instantly. They're the control freaks, want to make sure that they're in control. And some people never bothered trying. They're the somewhat lazy ones. And some people tried to open their eyes but couldn't. Well, that wasn't because of hypnosis. That was the word try. You see, try to the subconscious means failure. Trying to open the eyes is not the same as opening the eyes. Just like trying to score the goal and scoring the goal is not the same thing. Or trying to buy some bread and buying some bread is not the same thing. New Zealand's a great nation of triers. I wish they were a nation of doers. Now, what I'd like is, there's a chat box at the right-hand column. And what I'd like is some feedback from the audience as to what that was like. Just put something in the chat box. I can see it. We can all see it, I assume. And how it went for you. So, anyone writing any chat? I'm assuming that you're all out there listening. There's no chat coming in. Oh, that's interesting. So Neil says, definitely felt very relaxed. Anyone else making a comment? Voice is relaxing, not sure if hypnotized, but feel relaxed and comfortable. If you felt any changes in size or shape or weight, then you were in hypnosis. But I don't use the word hypnotized. I've had 30,000 people experience hypnosis, but I've never hypnotized anyone. Conductors don't music the orchestra. Conductors wave a baton and guide the orchestra into playing really good music. Yoga teachers don't yoga the class. They teach the class how to do yoga. It helps if the conductor's a really good musician, and it helps if the yoga teacher's very good at yoga. I'm very good at hypnosis. And what I do is I use the tone of my voice to guide you in a state of relaxation. And if you've made any of those changes that I was describing, then that is hypnosis. You don't lose control. You still know where you are and what's happening. I've got a very, very gentle style of hypnosis. So, is there any more feedback? I've got Neil and I've got Carol, who were there at the start. I know, but I hope everyone else was able to hear that. This is a bit strange not getting any feedback. Oh, Blissful says surveying spatial. Yeah. It was very good. Yeah. Okay. Now, nearly fell asleep. Yeah, that's probably because you're not getting enough sleep, may I say. And it energizes you when you do it. So surveying spatial, can you tell me, was there an audience for this apart from just the three of you? Yeah, but they're not responding, that's the thing. I just hope they've come out of it. Very peaceful. Right, well, a lot of people drift off if they're requiring a bit more sleep. And it's a very gentle form of hypnosis, non-controlling. So now what I want to do is to teach you how to do self-hypnosis. And this will probably surprise you how simple it is. So put your hands together in front of you in a prayer-like position. Palms touching each other. Then cross the thumbs over and intermingle the fingers. And extend the index fingers out till nearly parallel. Then stare at the gap between the fingers. And you'll feel them getting drawn together by the power of the mind. When the fingers touch, just close the eyes. Take a big breath in. And you'll be back to that lovely state of relaxation that you were in. That's good. Now to come out of it, just count to 10 inside your head. When you reach 8, the eyes will pop open. And at 10, you'll be wide awake. And back to reality. That relaxed state that you are in is called parasympathetic predominance. Your heart rate will fall, your blood pressure will drop, your muscles will be looser, your pupils will be smaller. It's really quite amazing. But here's the amazing thing. If I'm a good teacher, and I think I am, I've taught you hypnosis, and I've taught you self-hypnosis. But what I'd love to learn is, can you do it yourself? So without me speaking, I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes. What I'd like you to do is to put yourself into hypnosis, to stay in it for about half a minute or so, to count to 10 to bring yourself back out of it. And I'm not going to say a word. And when you come back out of it, you can start letting me know what it was like doing it yourself in the chat box. So go ahead and do it. Neil says a sense of peacefulness. Yeah. Which you can produce for yourself. There's a difference between teaching and learning. So Neil, you've obviously learned something today. A skill that will change your life for the better, I'm sure. Yeah. There's no comments coming through from the other participants at this stage. But I'm hoping that you were all able to do that. Yeah, most people, their eyes stay closed till 8. Yeah. Eyes definitely like to stay locked for 8. Yeah. A sense of calm. Became very aware of breathing. Yeah. Trying not to close the fingers, but it seems impossible. Yeah, it's a bit like meditation, not mediation, but close enough. I know what you mean. The end point of meditation and the end point of hypnosis, they're roughly the same. But for meditators, the journey is as important as the destination. And it's like a goat track through the mountains to get to what they call nirvana. And the fingers thing is like a 4-lane highway, just transmission gully, poof, takes you right there. 37 kilometers of transmission gully. Yeehaw! Very good. For those of you in the Wellington area, it's well worth enjoying. Yeah. Yeah, there's a wee bit of construction around me, so surprising how quick I was relaxed and heavy again, but still aware of the banging noise in the background. Well, that might be at my end. I can't control it, unfortunately. I'm good, but I can't silence it. So look, I'm just hoping that the audience has got a lot out of it. It's slightly disconcerting that there's no feedback from the rest of the audience. And given that I'm saying this, it's a bit surprising that it's not there. Perhaps they don't have that facility. Now, what I'd like to do now is to deal with old hurts and baggage from the past. And this is something that lots of people have. And I've got a wonderful technique to get rid of all emotional baggage with no discussion of problem whatsoever. And I'm doing this as a bonus for this particular group, because I've done this sort of presentation to this point hundreds of times. But what we're going to do now is fabulous. So just put yourself back into hypnosis. And when the fingers touch, just close the eyes and take a big breath in. And listening to the sound of my voice. Now, as you listen to the sound of my voice, I'd like you to imagine that you were walking along a corridor. And as you walk along the corridor, there are doors that lead off to the left and to the right. At the end of the corridor, see a door, a very inviting sort of door. You can decide for yourself the size and the shape and the color of the door. You can decide if it's a door that you would push or you would pull. And let me tell you what you'll find behind this door in just a few minutes. Behind the door, you'll find what I call your very own special place of bliss. Now, bliss is an old-fashioned word. not used much nowadays. Bliss, let me tell you, is the absence of worries, the absence of problems, the absence of concerns, the absence of traumas, the absence of all the bad things. But bliss is more than that. It's the positive presence of its concepts of peace and freedom and beauty and joy and happiness. And all of these wonderful things can be yours in just a few minutes. But on your back at the moment, you'll find a backpack. Take the backpack off and place it at your feet. As you open the backpack, you'll find inside it a collection of stones. Notice how the stones are somewhat flat, but rounded and smooth, like the sort of stones you might find on the bed of a river, or perhaps on a rocky beach. And these stones represent your problems. There are stones that represent the problems of today, the present, the things that are on your mind. And there might be some stones that represent the problems of the past. There probably will be. That's where you've spent all your life. And the past includes yesterday, last week, last month, last year. 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, all the way back to the very earliest recollections from childhood. And some of the stones might relate to the future. How can that possibly be? Well, these are often worries and concerns about what might happen, what might not happen. But since they might not happen, there's no point carrying them about. But, well, if they're in there, they'll be there. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to empty the backpack. Let me explain how to do that in a way which is completely safe for you. When it's time, I want you to look at the top stone, and it will probably somewhere on it have a label telling you which issue it represents. When it's time, I want you to momentarily pick up the stone, feel the weight of it, and just put it down on the floor, either to left or to right of the blissful door. Then go back to the backpack, identify the next stone, whatever it represents. Feel its weight and put it down. And when the backpack is empty, normally I would ask you to indicate, but I'll just give you a few minutes to empty it. And if you haven't completely emptied it by that time, you can just tip it up and dump the stones on the floor. So in the complete privacy of your own mind, start laying down all of your worries, problems, difficulties and concerns, and traumas. Issue by issue, problem by problem, stone by stone. Now, some of the stones might be what you expected. Some might have a different weight from what you expected. Some of the stones been in there a long time. Just feel the stone for a moment or two, feel the weight of it, and put it down on the floor, either to left or to right of the inviting door. There's some lucky people just have a few stones in their backpack. And others, I know there's 33 other people here, might have a quarry on their backpack, or a whole beach load of stones. So just put the stones down. They're flat stones, they can't roll away. Take another couple of minutes to know what the stones are and put them down. And based on how long it takes most people to do this exercise, I'd like you to just, if you've got some stones left inside it, just tip it up and take them out. There might be some pebbles at the bottom, little technicalities that people have. And then put the backpack down beside the pile of stones. And turn round to the door that leads to the place of bliss. And then open your door either by pushing it or pulling it. And go through into the place of bliss that your subconscious has already produced for you. And as you look around at the place that you find yourself, only you will know what it's like. Now, for some people, it could be a fabulous beach. Some people, it's a forest. For me, it's just like being in a cloud. Everyone's unique. Your brain knows what will be blissful for you. It does this quite automatically. And there's nothing that you have to do in this place of bliss. Nothing at all. And because structurally this is so simple, there's a corridor, there's a door, there's a backpack, you can repeat it long after this is finished. I like to do it before I fall asleep and lay down all my problems. All of them. But for now, come back out of that place of bliss. You can always go back there tonight and any time you want. And see the pile of stones lying where you left them. Now, you might like it about a magic wand that we could wave over the stones, and it would all disappear in a puff of smoke. But that would be fantasy, and this is reality. And in reality, you know that we can't change the meaning of the stones, or the number of stones, or the size or the shape of the stones, because they're set in stone. But there's one aspect of the stones that you can change, and that's the location of the stones. If you want, you could choose to leave some or even all of the stones lying on the floor. What difference would that make? Well, on the floor, you couldn't feel the weight anymore of any of the stones on the floor. And a problem with no weight to it we call a technicality. If you would like some or all of your problems to just be technicalities, then leave them lying on the floor. Don't have to pick them up. If, on the other hand, for your journey through life, for whatever reason, if you feel there's a need to carry some or all of the stones as a sense of personal burden, then by all means pick up the stone and feel the heaviness, the weight of it, the essential ingredient of burden. And now you've got a choice to make. Not a choice about your past or your problems. A choice about location. If you choose to leave it on the floor, it will just be a technicality. If you choose to pick it up and put it in your backpack, it will be a burden. So that as of now, burden is by choice. And technicality is by choice. So make your choice about location. And when you've done so, put the backpack back on your back, and I hope it's empty. I hope you feel lighter. And start to walk back along the corridor. Now, when you walk back along the corridor, you might see one or two stones lying in the corridor. Some people, believe it or not, are what I call habitual stone picker-uppers. Be a good lad, pick up those stones. Who's going to help me pick up those stones? I've got a mother like that. I've got a wife like that. I've got 3 daughters like that. But if that wasn't bad enough, some people go through life with a wide open backpack. And that allows other people to dump some of their stones in our backpack. And I'm sure some of you know what I mean by that, when you get dumped on. Now, I got the idea for this astonishing exercise from a line in a song. It was a song from the 60s. So some of the younger ones might never have heard it. And the song went by the title, Turn, Turn, Turn. And it went something like this: to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for everything under heaven. Now in the 3rd verse is a cryptic line that says, a time for laying down of stones, a time for gathering stones together. And I never knew what those words meant. So I turned it into this exercise one day. And I discovered on Google that the song was written by a guy called Pete Seeger. And it was first performed by a group called the Byrds, B-Y-R-D-S. But it's been covered by a lot of groups since then. But it turns out that Pete Seeger never wrote the words. He took them from a book called the Bible, from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1. So some people like this exercise because of its musical beginnings. Some people like it because of its biblical reference. Some people like it because of the physical obviousness. You put a heavy stone on the floor, you leave it there, you walk away, you can't feel the weight of it anymore. Psychiatrists call this a dissociation exercise. Instead of me and my problems, it becomes me and the problems. But I'm fascinated by the linguistic elements to it. When we talk about emotional baggage, do you think about bags of feathers? Or like I do you think about overweight luggage bursting at the seams? Have you ever claimed that you've got a ton of things to do next week, not realizing that you've just claimed to have 1,000 kilograms? Because that's what a ton is. Do you ever feel you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders? Or a monkey on your back? Or you're sinking into quicksand? And how come we talk about heavy workload, not a big workload? And it turns out that the English language is filled with these links between problems and weight, the heavy chains of office. And it's not just the English language that does this. Turns out it's every language. The Japanese have got a quotation about having to carry a sack of wet rice, which you can imagine would be a lot heavier than dry rice. The Arabs have to carry a sick camel through soft sand, which must be exhausting. The Germans have to drag the problems. And the Russians have to carry a big sack of firewood. And the French word for problem is problème, same as in English. But they do not use the word grand, which means big. They do not use lourd, which means heavy. And they put the adjective in French before the noun, which is very unusual in French. And the adjective they use is gros, G-R-O-S, which means very, very heavy. They say, oh, c'est un gros problème. It is a very heavy problem. And we take the word gros and we turn it into grossly in English. Because English is like a magpie language. It steals from every other language. But I can only think of two words that ever come after grossly. Grossly obese or grossly overweight. Both of which are very heavy. Because you've never heard the term grossly underweight. If you have very underweight or extremely underweight, but never grossly, because grossly is about weight. That's why you might see gross written on the back of some heavy trucks. It's about the weight on the axles. So look, it doesn't matter how you use this exercise. All that matters is whether you've left them on the floor, you're not carrying them. And you can leave them there. They're flat stones, they'll stay there forever. So now just count to 10 and walk along the corridor. At 8, your eyes will open. At 10, you'll be wide awake. And I hope you all feel a bit lighter. And if you've dealt with all the old hurts and baggage from the past, you've just gained 5 extra points on the prevention assessment. So when you're ready, I know that the comments coming in from Survey and Spatial are not just from one person. I've just realised that now. They're all coming in and being channeled to me. So give me some feedback on. There were 3 parts to the presentation, there was the first part where we went through the Burnout Inventory to assess how stressed you were. Then there was the prevention strategies checklist, the buffet of options that can give you multiple benefits across multiple streams. Then I taught you how to become super relaxed. And you've hopefully learned how to become super relaxed. And for the first ever time, I've demonstrated this technique to a non-clinical audience of how to just lay down all your problems with no discussion whatsoever. And this has been described as being truly remarkable, incredibly simple, very helpful. So tell me in the chat box any comments you have or feedback. Normally, if we were in a room and we're all sitting, we'd get feedback instantly. So I see they're coming in on Slido, whatever Slido is. I don't know what that is. Carol Fox says, like the idea of verbally, visually leaving issues in a location that you don't need to continue carrying around. Yeah. I mean, this is a bit like being a tradie and having a trailer and loading it up with every conceivable tool that any job might require. And you find that it wears out your suspension and you eat through the petrol. And what I'm saying is that only take the problems that you require for the job. And for the job of life, you don't actually have to take any problems at all. I've got an empty backpack. Yeah. Now, of course, I think it's so much better if I was in the room with you, talking to a whole group of people. But COVID put an end to that possibility. But I could also do this video type link somehow. And Jenny says, might help if you include your name with the comment. Yeah, that's a good idea. Somebody says, when sorting stones, it's sometimes a bit hard to distinguish between hurts and responsibilities. Both can be a burden to be carried. Well, experiment. Put it down for a day and see if the world falls apart. It won't. Or choose to carry it. It's your choice. You've got absolute freedom. I've got responsibilities as a doctor. I don't regard that as a burden. Confidentiality, ethics, safety. Nah. One of the greatest quotations of the 20th century was by a woman called Eleanor Roosevelt. And apparently she said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I never consent to feeling inferior. Paul Newton says, great to be able to measure stress and burnout and think about working on this. I've always been skeptical about hypnosis, but great to see it as a relaxing and de-stressing technique. I tend to get a bit twitchy and sometimes struggle to fully relax. Well, hopefully, Paul, you're super relaxed and you can do this yourself. Somebody says, can't really see how we're dealing with baggage apart from choosing the problems that we continue to carry. Well, I don't carry anything. I realize that if burden can be a choice, I don't carry it. Oh, I don't lose my attentiveness and concern and compassion. Someone says, if people are finding it hard to visualize the scenes you've described, any practices to help, or is it just practice? Well, there's a condition called aphantasia. That's spelled A-P-H, aphantasia, which is the inability to visualize. And some people know they've got it, and some people don't realize until we do something like this that they have it. And they're not very good at hypnosis, sadly. I wish I could help them, but some people just find it hard to visualize at all. Like, if I say, imagine a pair of shoes, no, they can't. Imagine a green door, no. I mean, for most of you, that would just sound, oh, come on, surely everyone can do that. But no, there is this condition. So what I'm hoping is that you all get something interesting out of that. I love that quotation by Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And one of the things I'm going to tell you is that New Zealand is a very pessimistic country. You might balk at that and think, oh, come on, no. Very lacking in self-confidence. Back in the days when we had cruise ships arriving at Wellington, cruise ship passengers would walk along Lambton Quay with a lanyard saying Star of the Sea Cruises or something like that. And they were constantly approached by New Zealanders saying, what do you think of New Zealand? And they learned that unless you reply using superlatives, New Zealanders get upset. I mean, I heard somebody say to a cruise ship passenger, what do you think of New Zealand? And he said, oh, it's raining. And they went, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it gets better than this, honestly. I don't know how many of you have visited Australia or America or other big countries. And they never ask you, what do you think of Australia? What do you think of England? What do you think of America? They don't care what you think. Yeah. There are certain countries that would win the Olympics for pessimism. The medalists would be New Zealand, Scotland, Sri Lanka, Uruguay, and Finland. And they're all small countries adjacent to bigger countries. New Zealand, Scotland, Uruguay, Sri Lanka, and Finland. And they always feel like the little brother of the big one. And the Aussies seem a bit more cocky and brash. They're the big brother. They've got more of everything. And we think we punch above our weight. Oh, yeah, we can do it. But we lack confidence. I mean, I was at a vineyard in Marlborough, and the owner said, "Is this the best Sauvignon Blanc you've ever tasted?" And I got a sudden pain at my ankle because it was my wife kicking me, going, "Don't bloody start." Because she knew I was going to say, "Oh, I had some from the Clare Valley that might have been a bit nicer," but, you know, I could have said to the guy in the Clare Valley, "Oh, I've had some from Marlborough that I think was nicer," and he would say, "They make a nice drop there, I'll give you that." Yeah. We need reassurance from outsiders that we're good enough. We're bloody brilliant. We've got a great country. I've been here for 29 years, and I'm going to die here. I mean, this is a fabulous country. If it wasn't so full of wowsers and complainers and people that didn't realise that it's a great country and just get on with it. But I've got a whole lecture about how to be an optimist that I haven't got time to deliver. Carol says, "So what you're saying is that we're doing this to ourselves, or rather letting others relive this over and over." Well, actually, I hate it when somebody says, "So what you're saying is," because I never said any of that. This is inference. What I'm saying is that with this exercise, it allows you to realize that burden is a choice. And you don't have to carry that weight. Yeah. So, any more feedback? Any questions? Because we've still got plenty of time. I could tell you that I've written a self-help book called Relax, Say Goodbye to Anxiety and Panic. And it's got a CD in the back cover, old-fashioned CDs. And it's published by Huya Publishers. And if you're a smoker, I've written a book called Quit, Say Goodbye to Smoking. And I wrote another book called How to Cure Anxiety in Just 4 Therapy Sessions. Couldn't get a publisher in this country, but the Germans decided to translate it to German. And they did, and I can't read it. The book's called Wie man Angst in nur 4 Therapiestunden heilt. How to Cure Anxiety in Just 4 Therapy Sessions. But my latest book has come out, and it's called How to Cure Anxiety in Just 5 Therapy Sessions. And it's a book for therapists that was put out in February the 15th. And it's a bestseller on Amazon. It's doing really well. Lots of people liking it. And 2 weeks after it was published, they turned it into an audiobook. And people are listening to it. And it's a computer voice, not an actor. And it's got the 2 exercises in it that we did today. It's on Google Play Books. And it's 5 sessions because I've inserted a lie detector technique to spot when you're inadvertently bullshitting yourself. In fact, I've got time left. Would you like to learn how to not trick yourself, not to fall for the nonsense inside your head? Would that be okay? Okay. So we can do this without any hypnosis, right? I'd like you to get a common unwanted thought inside your head. Could be a worry, it could be a doubt, could be a concern. And the voice inside your head ought to be your own voice. If it's the CIA talking to you, or the aliens, or God, have a word with me afterwards and come and see me in Wellington. But what I'd like you to concentrate on is not the words of that thought, but the tone of the voice with which you're broadcasting it inside your head. Now, it'll be different for every one of you, because you're all unique. But there's a common theme to the tone of voices that I hear in my therapy work. People say it can be harsh, or it can be mean, or it can be bossy, or it could be dominant, or it could be whatever. But it always sounds believable. So now what I'd like you to do is take that unwanted thought, whatever it was, put it out on your shoulder, anyone, and make it a cartoon voice, or a squeaky voice, or a helium balloon voice, if you can do that. Or perhaps a little leprechaun on your shoulder, talking to that if you want. And now have it try to beat you up and bother you. And it can't. It's ridiculous. Can't take it seriously. It's not believable. Drop it down from the shoulder to the armpit, the hot, dark, slightly sweaty recesses of the upper armpit. In a muffled, silly voice from the armpit, have it try to beat you up and bother you. And you know, it's nonsense. What makes it nonsense is the tone of voice. And I actually learned this by listening to my wife tell me about her experience as a student teacher in Scotland. And she was sent to the roughest, toughest primary school in Glasgow. And the classroom teacher said, I don't know why the College of Education has sent you here. Because these 6-year-old kids don't want to learn. And my wife was incredulous. What do you mean they don't want to learn? Every 6-year-old in the world wants to learn. She said, well, not these ones. Now, their big brothers and sisters run about the streets in gangs. And all they want to do is leave school at the first opportunity, and for a lot of them, before the first opportunity. And they're not interested in qualifications or getting a job. Because there might be no one in the street that's got a job. Seriously, it's as bad as that in the East End. And all they want is money for drink and drugs and sex and make babies and play dead at 40 from an overdose as a grandparent. So they walked into the classroom and the teacher said, this is Mrs. McCarthy, she will observe. And the first time my wife noticed what did not happen, because in every other class where she'd been introduced, the class had all stood up and in unison had chanted, good morning, Mrs. McCarthy, like they do in this country. But that never happened. There was nothing. So the teacher went and sat at a desk, put a briefcase up on the desk, put her head behind it, and said, get your books out, please. Turn to page 22, please. Oh, let's go on with the maths, please. And from every desk in the class, pre-prepared paper planes were tossed towards her. And she picks up the briefcase and uses it as a shield to deflect incoming missiles. And she kept turning around to my wife, mouthing, I told you they're unteachable. They don't want to learn. Now that afternoon, my wife had to take the class. And this skinny young thing, well, she was skinny then, walked out and stood in front of the desk. No briefcase. And she folded her arms defiantly. And she eyeballed him. You do not want to be eyeballed by her. And there was absolute silence. And then she said, get your books out, thank you. Turn to page 23, thank you. Let's go on with the maths, thank you. And every one of them reached for their book, turned to page 23. And the teacher's jaw nearly hit the floor. Well, that's an exaggeration. And the lesson went fabulously. And my wife guessed that eventually somebody would challenge her. She guessed it would be Tommy, the redhead in the front row. And Tommy looks up at her with a sneer on his face, like, oi, don't you know I run this class? And out the corner of her eye, she catches sight of Tommy. She swivels around and she eyeballs him. And Tommy blinked. And in the moment he took the blink, she took 2 giant but silent steps towards him. And when she opened her eyes from the momentary blink, when he opened his eyes, instead of being standing at the desk, she was right in his face. Tommy got a hell of a surprise and his head went down into his book. And the rest of the lesson went fabulously. And the teacher said, that was incredible. How did you do that? And she said, do you not know? He said, I've got no idea. He said, well, you sounded weak and pathetic. You sounded pleading. You sounded like a victim. She said, I am a victim. These kids hate me. They're horrible. My wife wondered at that point whether teaching was really a good idea or not. And she said, well, you sound like you're on the verge of tears. And these kids live in the street. And the law of the street is that weakness is not to be admired or respected or even tolerated. No. Weakness is to be stamped on, stomped on, and stabbed. Weakness is not to be given a helping hand. And 3 times you politely said, please. Now, please gives all the power to listeners. And 3 times the class collectively said, no, not doing it. And you brought in a pre-prepared shield, which was a suggestion of, you can throw things at me because I can defend myself. But when I stood there with no shield, the message was you wouldn't bloody dare toss anything. And when I eyeballed him, it was, I'm the boss. And when Tommy raises his eyes and I flatten him, I'm definitely the boss. But I really messed with their heads because 3 times, instead of saying please, I said thank you. And thank you is the polite word normally used after you've done something or in anticipation of you doing it. And guys, I can tell you that she's got a habit of using that in the place of please. So last night, for instance, she said to me, and I quote you, can I have a cup of tea, thank you? And a chocolate biscuit, thank you. That's why she's not so thin. And whilst you're in the kitchen, can you stack your dishwasher, thank you? It needs stacked. I was on task number 3 before I'd even realised what she'd said. So if you're making a request of someone, you might want to think of using thank you rather than please. So for instance, what's the difference between, can you get that report on my desk by tomorrow at 4 o'clock, please? And I want that report on my desk by tomorrow, 4 o'clock, thank you. Tone of voice is far more important in speech. That's why when women join the police force, they're taught to lower their voice by 2 full octaves. There's 2 hooded, tattooed guys standing beside a cash machine. Police officer walks up to them and says, "You two, move it." They would move it. But what would happen if the police officer said, "You two, move it, please"? They wouldn't budge. Tone of voice is crucial. But it's even more crucial in the unspoken voice inside your head. It's the voice of you talking to yourself. If you want to test whether it's true or not, put it out in the shoulder and down the armpit in a silly voice. And if it loses its believability, it's not true. Being able to recognize between unwanted thoughts that are true and unwanted thoughts that are not true is crucial. Unwanted thought that is true. The war in Ukraine might go on all year long. Do that with a silly voice. It's just as believable because it's true. I'm useless and terrible and hopeless and not good enough. It's not true. Simple as that. So someone said, "You've taught me it's okay to take time out to relax and refresh during the day to better focus on the task at hand." Well, the day is normally broken up with a coffee break and a lunch break and an afternoon break. And I'm saying take a 60-second break preemptively whenever you want. And you'll find that you're far more refreshed. Now, I've been talking to people riddled with anxiety all day long. And I've been working on here for 2 hours. And I don't feel in the slightest worn out or tired. Because I do this regularly. And I'm very relaxed. Now we've got 8 minutes left. Well, 7 it is now. Before we have to finish up. So can you send me any feedback or questions? I'd love to answer them. I could talk for hours and hours and hours, as you've probably realized. So Neil, do you want to unmute and come back into the last few minutes, if you want?
Sure.
So what was your impression of it?
Oh, gee, that's a profound question. No, I really enjoyed it, actually. I had to step out of the middle of it for about 10 minutes, but apart from that, no, it was really good. I really liked your sort of the handout questions, because I think having a measure or something to measure yourself against, I think, is really important. You mentioned that at the start of your topic, but you know, unless you have a tool like that, it's really difficult. You can feel that you're getting a bit stressed, or you can feel this and feel that, but having a measure is a very good thing, I think. And like you said, that when you first did the test, your score was 24 or 26, I can't remember what it was, something like that, which wasn't great. But it was a good measure for you to come to a realization that you actually have to do something. And I think that's really important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first time I did this, I was stunned. Someone says, do you have a technique to get rid of a tension headache rather than Panadol? Well, a tension headache is when the muscles here at the side of your head go into spasm, and they stretch the tissue underneath the skin. It's called the aponeurosis. And it gives you like a band across the head. And if you tighten up the 2 muscles at the nape of the neck, but just under the hairline, where the ridge is, you can get like a band around the head, tension headache. And that exercise that we did, the magnifying glass one, relaxes every muscle fiber in the body. So it's a brilliant treatment for tension headache or for fibromyalgia or for a whole host of things. Yeah. Yeah, so apparently I should really be doing teaching, but it's a bit of therapy as well.
It's good. I just see there was one comment just come in, like the idea of periodically checking in with the test to look at progression, probably unrealistic to resolve in one hit and look to deal with it bit by bit. Have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it took me about 6 months to make a transformation in my life. Significant transformation. So you can just tick them off. And here's the thing, if there's ones where you score a 0, focus on those ones and get a 1 or a 3 as soon as possible. So for instance, you do something for fun, rarely 0. Start doing something for fun. Do you share your stresses, cares, or problems with others? 0. Get it a 1 or a 3. If you're scoring a 0, you're unlikely to get it to a 5. But the more you can get your score up on the second questionnaire, the lower your score will be on the first one. They're inversely proportional. The better your coping skills, prevention skills, the less your symptomatic skills, symptomatic scores.
Yeah, I like the idea of you just progressively just doing one at a time, because I think you can kind of be a little bit overwhelmed, can't you? Like, you know, if you do this test and you get a terrible score, it's just adding to your stress, really.
Oh, I gave this presentation at the post office, and 1/3 of the room said, "I'm resigning." So I hope that doesn't happen. Because they were horrified by their scores. I mean, most people are quite delusional about how stressed they are. They go, "I'm a bit stressed," or moderately stressed, or whatever. They've got no idea. They can't measure it. This is a way to just quantify it. Because all those symptoms are actually in the textbook. Yeah. They're just taken right out of the textbook. People with depression score badly for all of those things. So somebody says, when we develop a strategy, we don't focus on 10 things, we focus on 1 to 3 things to ensure that we achieve and execute those goals. Well, I've given you 23, and I call it a buffet. And I'm saying, pick and mix, just take whatever you want. And if you don't like Brussels sprouts, just have a few. Just have some. It's not going to kill you. At a buffet, are you the kind of person who takes the stuff that you know that you're going to like? Or if you see something that's a bit different, would you experiment? If there was a bowl that was labelled haggis, would you touch it? It's lovely. Scottish sausage.
Dr. McCarthy, there's one last question there. Any techniques for self-affirmation, which was, I think, must be number 21 on your sheet?
Yeah. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I refuse to consent to feeling inferior. I refuse to consent to feeling inferior. There's another great quote that was on a t-shirt, and it's just do it. Now, for some reason, it's not just give it a try. Don't just have a go at it. The Nike slogan for years was just do it. And I wish that that was the motto of this country. Just do it. But we're a nation of triers. Now, it's 3 o'clock, so I have to go. You've got things to do, Neil. I hope this was what you wanted.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. McCarthy. Of all the, on behalf of everyone that attended and listened to you, I hope they've all got something out of it. I did, which was great. So I think if everyone just takes one thing away from it, that'd be a great thing. So thank you very much, Mr. McCarthy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Okay, everybody, just to the last quick little bit that we've got for the end of this session is some communications from the management team. And I think hopefully Carl Fox will come on board. And we've got Rachel and Anna, which is great. So I would, well, Carl, do you want to do a thank you?
Very good. Yes, there's lots of thank yous with this as well. So, look, I'll start off with a thank you for the people who have been instrumental in organising this speaker series, and good to see your name is up there, Neil. So Neil has put in a ton of effort, and we needed to make this we needed to do something. 2 years without a meeting wasn't going to be acceptable. And so while the speaker series is not really a replacement for the workshop it was this year, and you've done a magnificent job, and I know you've been really well supported by Rachel and Wendy, and of course we've also had some help from Survey and Spatial with Jenny with some of the technology, but particularly for the three of you, a big thank you. I've enjoyed the speaker series and I think it's gone very well. The other person on the screen there is Fiona, and Fiona has put in decades, and it is decades, I'm sure, because I've been there for a decade myself, of organisation of the workshops. And this is it. Fiona has bowed out, and we just want to publicly thank Fiona. And Fiona has been training up Rachel as well. Not sure how much training Rachel requires, but from what I hear, doing very well.
Not very much.
But Fiona, look, as I said to you, you were not allowed to stop doing these workshops until I finished my chairship. And I think all of the CSNZ membership, it is a real heartfelt thank you for the effort you've put on over these many, many years of organising the workshops, the coming up and helping with the themes, the organisation, and just making it as enjoyable as it has been and as popular as it has been. We have had, I believe you've hopefully received your gift of appreciation, but we did not want you to be able to just slide away quietly without having us publicly acknowledge your efforts that have been applied over the years. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to say something if you so wish. Normally you would. So, Muff, have you got something to say?
Unmute yourself, Muff. Oh, I don't think we can hear you. It's okay if we can't. No, we still can't hear you, Fiona.
We've got 3 official languages. How good is your 3rd official language? You know, the sign language.
Oh, thank you, Fiona. I've worked with you on a couple of workshops, and it's just been a pleasure, really. You've taken a lot of the hard work out of it. There's another couple of, or one other person I'd really like to thank as well, and that's Paul Turner. He was involved and instrumental with Fiona in setting up the Marlborough workshop that has been cancelled twice. There was a lot of work put in behind it, and I just really stepped in at the end and turned it into a different format, really, with the help of Rachel and Wendy. So it was a lot of your hard work and great ideas that have made it what it is. So thank you very much.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, I was recently described as this is not a very PC sum, but a baby boomer technical retard. That's me. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the generous gift. That's really kind, really kind, actually. Rachel has had virtually no training from me, so if she's doing well, that's all on her own merit. So go you, Rachel. That's awesome. And for me, resigning from this role, which I think this is maybe my fourth resignation, perhaps, it's really bittersweet, 100%. And I still don't even know if this is the right thing, but what I know is I don't have the time. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? Is if I want to do something, I want to do it well, and I can't commit to that for CSNZ at the moment. But I've loved meeting all the members, working with the committee, and actually the speakers as well. I've learned a lot over the years working with these people. So Rachel, if you're staying on and you're putting up your hand, it's going to be a good time for you, and hopefully 14 years as well. That's usually the tenure, so that's what you signed up for, I think. So yeah, I hope the speaker series went well for you. I didn't log into any of them myself, so I don't know. But the little bit of feedback that I have had has been really positive. So good on management committee for committing and doing that for you, as Carl said, after just too many years of nothing really. And hopefully this will just keep the momentum going for your workshops going forward. So I want to see you all again at some point. I would like to make a shout out actually to John Carter. I don't know if he's in this today, but he's been such a massive, big mentor and helper for me all the way through. And then I have actually put a couple of workshops together with a few of you more than once. So you, Neil, it's always a pleasure working with Neil. And I've had a lot to do with yourself, Carl, and a few of the other members as well. So I'm going to miss it. It's just that simple, really.
Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, thank you for everything. Just a little touch on the point, as Carl said at the beginning, the ideal world and what we strive to achieve is to have person-to-person workshop. We think that's absolutely the best way. But in the circumstances, we had to revert to this, as you probably all understand. But interestingly, 3 of the people that have participated in this have COVID at the moment, and it just wouldn't have been able to happen if we'd have been in person. It would have been an absolute disaster. So it's worked okay. I hope you've enjoyed it. It was really the only way it was going to work this year. But hopefully next year we can all get together.
And Rachel, I guess we should introduce you. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit as well?
Hello, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed the speaker series. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say, really.
No, look, well, Rachel, thank you very much. And as I say, there's so much behind the scenes stuff that people don't see. And Rachel, thank you for those efforts that you've put in there. So that's been excellent. Neil, I guess it'd be, while we're talking about workshops and the like, would you like to announce?
Well, you can do that, Carl.
No, okay, look, the next workshop, we looked around and it is in the South Island, and we were looking for some keen people and some places which we haven't been to before, but also practical and accessible to go to. And so Invercargill is our next port of call, and so Linda is like, whew, it's not Hokitika. And it's Don is convener, is that right, Neil?
Yes.
So
Yep.
Neil has had a chat with Don and put up the hand there. So obviously Don will need some assistance as well. So looking forward to that, and we'll work on what the content will be. But again, a lot of that magic is about our face-to-face catch-up. So I do hope to see everybody, or as many people as we can get to Invercargill. Certainly, we need to get the new members there, because the networking that goes on in between these sessions is really as valuable as the sessions themselves. Neil, would you be able to just report a little bit on the sort of numbers that we saw, how many people we had registered and what sort of various numbers we had during the various sessions?
Yeah, sure. We'd sort of budgeted, interestingly, to break even on about 40 people for this the speaker series, and in fact we got 81 registrants, which was absolutely fantastic. And thank you everybody for registering and supporting. It's been really, really good. We've actually we were carrying a loss from the last 2 cancellations, and that loss has been basically annulled now. So that's very pleasing. And in terms of people that have been attending, it's sort of ranged a little bit, but I think the minimum we've had is 33 people online at time. When I say people, 39 people logged in, and some of those have had 2 and 3 people within that same session, just in the same room. And we've had maximum, I think, was 61. So of the 81 that I guess there was a whole variation between some people chose not to. Just a quick note, as Rachel's been communicating with you, all of the sessions have been recorded. So if you couldn't make one, or you want to watch it again, all those links will be sent out hopefully next week, or definitely within the next 2 weeks. We've also, and that'll include notes, or the presenter notes and all of that stuff as well. And we've also got Ashley Church's presentation. He was ill and wasn't able to present on when he was scheduled to, but he has volunteered to actually do a presentation. So Rachel will send you out, everyone that's registered, an invite to his one in the next week or so. So stand by for that. Keep an eye on your emails, and you should see that and be able to listen to Ashley, which I'm sure will be very interesting, talking about property and surveying and spatial. So I think that's probably wind up time. Thank you, everybody. It's been fantastic. Thanks again. And let's look forward to face-to-face in-person one next year.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nick.